How well do you know your money mindset? Whether you like it or not, the stories you have about money impact your income. In this episode, I'm sitting down with Darren Wurz, financial advisor, author of the book, The Lawyer Millionaire, and host of the podcast with the same name, to talk about something so many lawyers struggle with: money mindset. Hello. I hope your day is going so well right now. I am having a beautiful day. The sun is out. It's still cold outside here in Sacramento, but I am fine with it. Now, I don't know about you, but in January, I have definitely been feeling like there is some big energy happening right now in my business and in my life. I've been prepping my house for moving still. I just had a VIP day with a lawyer revamping her business and preparing her for a fabulous 2025. And it's so fun diving deep into a lawyer's business because you get to really see how well things are working. Because if you're making money, things are definitely working in your practice. And there are rooms, there are areas that need some tidying up. And we did a lot of that, and we did a lot of prioritizing exactly what needed to happen next. This is a lot of the work that I do with my one-on-one clients. Like this is what I work on, really revamping, reimagining what their practices can look like and making those shifts that they need to make that up level them, that take them to that next place that they need to go to have the practice, to have the life that they want. And that is just, it lights me up when I get to do that. And I definitely felt some big shifts during our VIP day. And I'm also working with my timepiece students to change how they approach their practices, how they approach working in their practices, which is really a huge deal. When I was working as a prosecutor and I was stressed out versus when I learned how to manage my time and manage myself and my mindset within my practice, it was night and day. So, really doing that kind of work with people, it moves a lot of energy, a lot of shifts are happening, and I love getting to work with everybody that's in my world. So, if you're one of my students, if you're one of my one-on-one clients, thank you. I'm so glad I get to work with you because I get to be a part of something bigger. I get to be a part of seeing lawyers change their lives. And it's a generational change because it doesn't just change you, it changes the people who work with you and see how you're doing things differently. It changes your family members and how they interact with you and to watch how your relationships with other people grow. It's just amazing. So thank you. I'm having a moment of gratitude here right now because it is so much fun to get to work with people who are like-minded, who want to expand, but also want to improve their quality of life because they know that work is not everything, that they need to prioritize life, and we get to work making that happen. And to expand your business while doing it, it's just amazing. It's just amazing that we can do this work together. So thank you. There's so much happening in my world right now. And if you're not following me on Instagram or LinkedIn, come and join me there. I'm on Instagram at Dina.Cataldo, and on LinkedIn, you can find me under Dina Cataldo. I tend to share more personal things on Instagram. It's just the nature of the app. I get to share things on stories and all of that at the last minute. So if you are interested in that aspect, definitely join me on Instagram. But whether you join me there or on LinkedIn, it would be really great to connect with you. So if you're listening to this episode, come join me on Instagram, LinkedIn, message me on either of the platforms. Let me know that you listen to the podcast. I would love to just say hi. All right, I am so excited to bring you today's guest and topic. Anytime I get to talk about money, I like to do it because it's a highly requested topic for this podcast. And I love talking about it because if you've listened to some of my other mindset episodes around money, you have an idea of my history around money and what I've worked on around money and how I have seen things shift in my life because of the work that I've done with it, that mindset, with everything. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here today. Before we start up, though, I want to make sure that you have downloaded my workbook, Three Sneaky Problems Stealing Your Time and Productivity and How to Fix Them Now. Money and time are intertwined, my friend, and it's not because money is time or time is money, right? It's because of how we think about either if we're in scarcity mode, we don't have enough, we are going to create one kind of result in our life and it's not going to be a great one. It's going to be one where we feel overwhelmed and we're stressing ourselves out and we're working really hard. And then in another where we are creating a sense of abundance and really understanding the way we need to be thinking about time and money, it's going to create more prosperity in our lives, both in time and in money. And so in my life, what I have noticed is that when I started feeling more abundant around time, I started feeling more abundant around money. It was because I started to understand how I was thinking around time was causing my stress and my overwhelm. It was really causing some major problems. And when I started tweaking some of that and fixing some of that, I started to see how mindset came into play there. And then I started taking what I was learning there and brought it to my money. So if you're listening to this episode for money and you're feeling overwhelmed, you definitely want to download this this workbook. But in the last 6 years, I've been helping big-hearted lawyers like you get over the overwhelm, stop feeling stressed out, do things like stop working 6 days a week and start bringing it down to 4 days a week while growing their revenue. Bill their 2,100 minimum required hours without stressing out and while making time to do things like travel and do it without their laptop, right? Make partner while making time for their hobbies. Learn to litigate without feeling anxiety and overwhelm every single time. Build new businesses on top of their legal careers without feeling pressure or stress, and increase their revenue by tens of thousands of dollars year after year without working harder. And right now, achieving these kinds of results might seem impossible. You might feel overwhelmed, like you're on a hamster wheel, and there's just no way out right now. I've been there, which is why I've made it my mission to help lawyers like you take back your sense of power over their time and regain your peace in the process. And you're going to get practical steps that are going to lay the foundation for you to create the results you want to see in your life and in your law practice inside this workbook. You can download this workbook, Three Sneaky Problems Stealing Your Time and Productivity, at dinacataldo.com/timepiece. That's PEACE. dinacataldo.com/timepiece, PEACE. All right. So let's talk about this episode. We dig into the beliefs you might have about money, beliefs you probably don't even realize that are running the show, and how those beliefs are impacting your practice, your income, and your life. Whether you're overgiving your time, undercharging for your services, or avoiding looking at your numbers altogether, this episode is going to help you start shifting the way you think about money. Here's what you're going to take away from our conversation today: the hidden money scripts you grew up with and how they might be affecting your decisions today. Why so many lawyers undervalue their work and overgive, and how to break those habits. A simple exercise to uncover the beliefs you have about money and start shifting them. How to feel more confident raising your rates and valuing your services. Why saving even just a little bit of money each month can create huge momentum when it comes to long-term financial success, and how to get started if you've been avoiding it. Darren also shares some actionable tips to explore your money mindset, including journaling prompts, which I love. I'm all about the journal prompts, and even an interesting exercise with cash that we talk about that's going to open your eyes to what's going on beneath the surface when you think about money. And we're going to talk about a lot of different links, a lot of different books. We talk about a lot of the resources that Darren has created over the years. And you can find everything mentioned in today's episode by going to the show notes at dinacataldo.com/351. That's dinacataldo.com /351. All right, let's dive into today's episode. Hi, Darren. Thank you for joining me on Be a Better Lawyer. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Dina. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. If you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about yourself for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Darren Wurz. I'm the founder of the Lawyer Millionaire, and we are a financial planning firm that works exclusively with law firm owners. So, that makes us really unique in the space. But being that law firm owners are our clients, we know that there are some things that are very important to them besides just investments and taxes and insurance and retirement planning. Before all that, paramount is building and growing the business. And
Mhm.
so we've actually made business planning, a business strategy, a part of our work as well. We don't replace business coaches by any means, but we can provide some extra help in that area. And then we have a peer network that we've built because all our clients are law firm owners. We figured why not get them connected in a community where they can help each other, learn from each other, support each other. And we started a book club. It's called the Lawyer Millionaire Book Club. It just launched, which is really exciting. And the first book we're reading is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel.
Yes.
So, yeah, if you want to,
Yeah.
read some great books and interact with some great people who are your peers, it's at community.lawyermillionaire.com. We have a podcast, The Lawyer Millionaire, as well, and also wrote a book published by the ABA, also called The Lawyer
Yeah.
Millionaire. So a lot
Yeah.
of branding.
Hey, yeah, that's good branding. And I'm going to link to all of that in the show notes too for everybody who's listening. So I thought it would be super fun to talk about money mindset with you because so many of the lawyers listening right now, whether they own their own law firm or not, have issues that come up when it comes to money. And a lot of lawyers say to me, I'm just bad with math. That's why I became a lawyer. And so we kind of buy into this mindset of, oh, I'm just bad with numbers. I'm just bad with money. And that prevents us from really looking at the numbers. Tell me
Yeah.
what you see, if this is something you see come up, and how you really view money and how you look at money when you're looking at somebody's income or somebody's business when they come to you.
Yes. So, there are definitely some common themes that have come up when working with law firm owners. Um, we tend to refer to this concept under the term of money scripts. So
Hmm.
money scripts are beliefs about money that we inherited from our parents, that we learned growing up from our religious institutions or our schooling, um, and they can affect our decisions and our behaviors. So and money scripts are not always wrong. They have a time and a place. But the problem with money scripts comes when we apply them universally or we apply them in areas or places where they should not be applied.
Hmm.
Um, so I'll give you a very common example. It comes from if you had a religious upbringing, maybe you were taught this idea that money is somehow bad or evil. The love of money is evil. I think the actual words are the love of money is a root of evil. But anyway, there's this equation of money and evil that comes from a lot of from a religious upbringing in some cases. And what that tends to do is it tends to put you in a position where you don't want to be seen as someone who has a lot of money. So you might be, how might that affect you, right? That might lead you to a place where you don't feel good making money
Hmm.
or you don't feel good charging for your services. And so you might undercharge. You feel bad about asking for people to pay for your
Yeah,
services
for sure. I
or
see that
things like
one.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like this is really good for anyone listening who's resonating with this and seeing some of this show up in your life. Also, it doesn't even have to be that you heard something over and over again. It could be the actions that you witnessed in your household every single day. If you saw people who were overgiving, right? So sometimes what I'll see
Yeah.
are lawyers who they have a retainer with somebody, but then they have told themselves, oh, I forgot to tell them this other thing that's outside the scope of the retainer, so I'll just do it. I'll just take care of it. So they overgive their services, they overgive their time, they don't communicate with their clients to update their retainer. And what happens is they begin to feel resentful. They begin to feel like, oh, why am I working so hard and I'm making so little? and they're not even recognizing that there's a pattern that's developed. You call them scripts, I call them stories, but it's the same thing,
Yeah.
which is when we develop these scripts or stories over time, whether it is in a structured context or whether we're just learning it from the actions of our caregivers growing up, we can overgive and we can undervalue our services. So it's important to have these awarenesses because once you're aware, then you start to have a direction to move yourself to say, "Oh, okay, I see. I'm overgiving. I
Hmm.
am thinking money is not for me. I'm thinking that money is just for bad people, and so I'm pushing money away. Like I'm literally emotionally pushing money away."
Yeah.
So when you see this come up in the context of your work, um, how do you handle it? Because I know that I'll deal it like let me give you a specific example around rates. Like let's say you're looking at someone who maybe hasn't raised their rates in a couple years and they're definitely doing high quality work, but they feel uncomfortable raising their rates. And you can tell that because they just haven't done it. How do you handle that?
Mm. I mean, we first want to understand what are the money scripts at play. So we have assessments that we can take clients through to help them get at what are the underlying beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to go deeper, let's understand what was the childhood in which you grew up. Like what kind of an environment did you grow up in as a child? What was your home life like? Um, and there's no one way that that plays out. If you grew up in a home where there were not a lot of resources, it doesn't automatically mean that you have a certain type of money scripts. It could go in a lot of different directions.
Right.
But it's important to understand that, so then you understand I might be prone to behaving in this type of way, and then we can give ourselves homework and we can say, okay, every time such and such happens, I need to remind myself X, or we can have a set of affirmations about money that we create that maybe we say to ourselves to try to reteach and relearn new money scripts and try to encode a new set of beliefs in our subconscious.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it gets really deep.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because in the work that I do, like just to give another example, in a consult, for instance, an attorney might immediately undercut their rates because in their mind they're thinking a lot of thoughts. There's a lot of stories they have around how much can this person afford, that the attorney, their rates are too high. They have all of these different stories, and so sometimes the attorneys will be in a consult and they'll automatically say, "Oh, that, you know what? If you can't afford that, that's okay. I'll actually knock off a couple $100 here or a little bit there." And they're not even giving the client or potential client the opportunity to respond because they have these beliefs that are undercutting what they're capable of. So what you just described is, I go into it in terms of, okay, let's look at step by step what's going on. How do you feel? Because a lot of times we don't have access to the thoughts. We may not even know where it comes from, but we always know how we feel if we sit with it and get accustomed to noticing our feelings. It's not just that anxiety, which is a lot of times, I'll talk to lawyers and that's all they can feel at first. But when you begin to calm the anxiety down and the overwhelm down, you begin to notice these subtleties in how you feel when you're even talking about money, when you're
Hmm.
even having that money conversation. And that can be a cue to then bring in the new belief you want to have, which is, oh, I am going to wait here and feel uncomfortable. All that's happening is I'm having a reaction in my body because I have this belief that I need to cut my fee in order to people please, in order to make this person happy, in order for them to say yes. But instead of immediately undercutting, I'm going to sit with it. Do you
Yeah.
have like a process that you kind of walk your people through that's either like that or, something that brings them awareness in the moment? Because I think that that's where So many of us, we have an idea of what we should be doing, right? We should
Hmm.
be raising our rates. We shouldn't be undercutting ourselves. We should be having that conversation, to get a new retainer, but we don't do it
Yeah,
because we have a block which is where the mindset and the emotions come in.
it's so true. I think it takes a lot of reflection. There are a number of exercises that we can go through. Um, one of the
Well,
best,
take us through one right now, like with just one example,
yeah,
like let's take the consult one for example.
yeah, this is one you might try. It
Yeah.
it comes from a financial therapist um, who I spoke with when I was doing my master's program, and she said, and she would have her clients actually take some money, a big wad of cash, $1,000, take a big wad of cash, right? And just sit there, hold it in your hands, and sit there and wait for the emotions
Mm.
and see what comes up.
Mm.
And it's interesting because physical money does that in a way that digital money doesn't necessarily. But just sit there with the money, hold the money, maybe even talk to the money and see what. And she said that people would have all kinds of very interesting reactions to the money. So that's one that you can do.
That reminds me
Yeah.
of I have a coach and she says, "You know what? Carry a lot of cash with you. Like just have it in your wallet. Just being with the act of having money and getting comfortable with lots of money, right, is something that your nervous system, a lot of us need to get used to. Because a lot of us, if we have scarcity issues around money, we're, always thinking about how we don't have enough, right? There's something in there. It always comes down to this one thing, which is deserving, right?
Hmm.
So are we enough as human beings? Not even, have enough money, have enough success, have enough this, that, and the other. It always comes down to are we as humans enough? But one of the things that can help us learn to regulate our nervous system and learn the things that are coming up for us is having that money in our wallet and just saying, "Oh, I have money. I have lots of money," and getting used to that abundance. That's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. And just saying something like that, um, how does that make you feel? Like saying the phrase, I deserve money.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have a list of different phrases and we can go through these with a client and say, how does that make you feel? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Say that to yourself. I deserve money. And then think to yourself, how does it make me feel? Is there a twinge of cringiness to that? Then maybe there's something we need to explore there, right? I mean, this
Yeah.
is very personal for me because I grew up in a very religious household where
Mm-hmm.
money was not to be desired, you know. And, ironically, my dad was an investment advisor, so he made a lot of money, and we were very blessed. So it created this tension within me where I felt guilty for wanting to aspire to be paid a lot of money. And I felt like I needed to live a life of sacrifice, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be a missionary or I wanted to do something very sacrificial. I ended up going into teaching. It was my first career was teaching. And I taught eighth and ninth grade science. I did that for 5 years before I became a financial advisor. What I realized is that I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I was doing it because I felt like I needed to give, and I needed, I was undeserving of being paid well for any other type of job. So I found a job that didn't pay as much that I felt would be more of service to the world,
Mm-hmm.
not because it was a true like desire of mine, but because I had shame around money,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's a lot to uncover there.
Right? I mean, money's
Yeah.
such a complex thing because if you look in society, it's something to be desired, right? We look at people like, oh, look how big their house is, look what a nice car they have, right? Like all these different things on the exterior that society tells us are things we should, in quotes, desire. And I think a lot of lawyers enter the profession thinking that, oh, this is going to create safety, right? If I create money through being a lawyer, lawyers make money, then I will create safety. But then they go into the legal profession, they get their own firm, right? They create their own firm. And then what happens is they were getting paid, maybe they worked for a firm before and they were getting paid regularly, and then they come into a firm that they own, and then that's where all of the issues really start to become clear because when you're an entrepreneur, you got to clean all this stuff up. Like
Yeah.
this is like for me, I mean, I had a lot of thoughts around money. I still do, right? I think it's an ever growing and evolving process for each person. And when I first came into creating my own business, I didn't realize I had money issues, right? That I
Mm,
was thinking about money in terms of scarcity. I was thinking about it in terms of things I needed to work really hard. I needed to struggle for money, right? I needed to really put all of my effort in. And it has taken time to release that so that I could thrive in my business. But I see that with law firm owners when they create their business, they so often stay stuck there because they don't even see it. They don't even see that there is a money issue and they
mhm.
don't even know how to address it. And I guess that kind of brings me into the next question I have for you, which is now that somebody's listening to this, maybe now they have this awareness that they have something going on with money where they feel uncomfortable around it, or maybe they are noticing some of the, I'll call them symptoms of feeling scarcity or some sort of obligation, right, to overwork for people, to people please and not charge the value of their services. Now they know what they should be doing, then you know that they know that when they come to you, but sometimes they don't do it, right? Like if they don't have a coach or they don't have an
Yeah.
advisor like you, they hear this and they think, "Oh, I know what I need to do. I need to raise my rates. I need to stop undercutting. I need to contemporaneously bill." Like they know they should be doing these things, but what's the next step in order for them to actually do it? I know my process, but I'm curious what your process is.
Yeah. This is where it's very helpful to have a coach because we all have blind spots. We all have areas that we need help with. Um, I'll give you a great example. Um, my dad invested heavily in a tech company during the tech bubble.
Mm,
And it was interesting because I was coming of age at the time, and I was in middle school, and I would remember on our rides to school in the morning, he would be telling me about how high the stock price was getting, and calculating how much money he was accruing because the stock price was rising, right? And everything was going nuts. Well, then this stock was going up, 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 up. I think it hit like $35 a share, and he was excited. And then what happened? The tech bubble
mm,
burst, the thing dropped to under $1 a share, and it stayed there for a long time. And so that was during the formative years of my childhood.
mm,
So I naturally, as a result of that, became very risk averse.
mm,
And I'm an investment advisor. I counsel people on where to put their money, but personally, I tend to be shy away from risk. I tend to always be expecting when's the next financial crisis, when's the next bear market, when, I have a
mm,
pessimism and a skepticism about markets because that was my upbringing. So I have to be careful how that colors my thinking. I have to be
mm,
careful that I'm not bent more towards pessimism than towards optimism. And we look throughout our history, there have been plenty of times to be very pessimistic. The COVID crash, for instance, was a time to be very pessimistic, perhaps. But we saw what happened. Markets launched higher and higher and higher and higher after that event. So, and this is an argument from the book Psychology of Money. They talk about this, that pessimism is more intellectually satisfying. So if you're an intellectual, like a lawyer,
mm,
you're a smart person, pessimism is more intellectually satisfying. We hear the doomsday prophecies all the time. The world is ending, right? The debt, the debt is going to implode. The Social Security is going to end. The government's going bankrupt. And there's a part of our lizard brain that finds this stimulating, and it finds it more stimulating than optimism. If you were to go on TV and say, the world's ending, right? The stock market's going to crash, there's going to be a huge panic, you would get more attention than if you were to go on TV and say, the stock market's going to soar.
Hmm.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is something I'm always saying is we pay too much attention to the news. Like we give it
Yeah.
too much credence. And when we tend to, and I used to be this way, so I'm, no disrespect to anyone who does this, but I would listen to NPR constantly. It was like always in my ear,
I
in
love
in
NPR.
my car. You know what? But there's an overload, right?
Yeah.
Like there's an overload point. Like you can now what I do is I kind of flip through the headlines and pick and choose, but then I know what the news is going to say. Like I
Yeah.
never have a doubt around what the news is going to say. It's never, oh, look at all the people who were saved today and look at all of how kind people were today. It's
Yeah.
always going to be about war. It's always going to be about debt. And those are the things that have that emotional pull. And that's
That's
why they
right.
publish those things.
Hmm.
And so if I want to get manipulated, I'm not going to put myself in intentionally in the way of somebody trying to manipulate how I feel and how I think. So I do my best not to anyway, right? Like of
Yeah.
course we've got to pay attention, but I think that's a really good example is having those awarenesses of things that have impacted us emotionally over the years and how that can play into our decision making. When you were
Yeah.
talking about stocks, my dad was the opposite. So my dad thought he was going to get rich quick. So he did day trading. And the problem was is that he did okay at first. And so
Oh,
he
yeah.
had convinced himself that this was something that was going to be profitable. So he would spend a lot of time going back and forth between stocks. Well, my mom and I would kind of just would let him do whatever he's going to do. That's fine. But later on, we talked about it between ourselves, and I'm like, what was he thinking? I mean, it was to
Mm.
me, it was the equivalent of just gambling and throwing away money,
Yeah.
right? Versus staying with something that might be uncomfortable going up and down, instead allowing yourself, I think, I don't know if this is true, but almost like tricking yourself into believing that there's another hot thing, right? There's grass is going to be greener on the other side, but trying to do it mathematically and thinking you're going to beat the system.
Oh,
And I'm
yes.
sure there's somebody who does it out there, but I think for the vast majority of people, that's not going to happen.
Well, you've just opened up a great can of worms, Dina.
Oh, good.
Um, yes. So here's a very important truth in investing. Every strategy works until it doesn't.
Mm,
So you might find a pattern. You might find a pattern that works and it's working really well, but at some point that pattern is going to end. And we see this play out time and time again throughout history, right? Everything has a moment where it works, and then it gives us, ooh, maybe this will work forever. History
mm,
history does repeat itself, but it doesn't repeat itself the same way every
yeah.
time. That's the problem. So many people, and this there's been an explosion of this since social media, and everybody's got a day trading scheme. They become a billionaire overnight. Um, and the problem is someone might be true. Someone might have a strategy that works, but it's not going to work forever.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing about that. Let's think about the world of odds and probability. You have, let's say you have 1 million people trying to find a strategy that works, right? Of course, one of them is going to succeed, right?
Yeah.
In the world of probability, we have 1,000 coins flipping. One of them is going to flip on heads, right? So somebody's going to find a permutation of algorithms that functions, that works, that's making money. But it's not because they were intellectually better than everybody else, it's because they are the ones that got lucky, right? They were the one out of the thousands of coins that were flipped that happened to work.
It's interesting that you should say that. I have a different theory, but it ties in with what you're saying. So for business generally, that's also true.
Can
You
be,
can
yes.
have a business strategy that's working. And I mean, the clients I work with, they have really good referral sources. Like they're doing really well. They can't help it. Like the abundance comes to them. It's like, wow, okay. But then it's a matter of how do we channel that abundance? But in relation to that is you always want to be thinking about, yes, this is working right now. And how might I play with this a little bit? So for just a solid example of this is let's take an attorney that is making good money, but they know they need to raise their rates. They know they need to really look at their finances more carefully to make sure they're not overspending in areas and making sure that they're not spending needlessly. And recognizing that there are investment opportunities. They might have a lot of cash on hand, and that's not something that's necessarily going to benefit them. And they can see where all the leads are coming in, the people are coming in,
Hmm.
whether it's referrals or whatever it is. They might also take on another tact, which is starting to cultivate an audience on LinkedIn or Instagram and beginning to have people who come onto the website who might not be interested in their services immediately, but then branch out into, well, let me bring them onto a newsletter. Let me start to nurture them and talk to them and let them know more about what I do and build that comfort level for them to then decide that they want to work with me. And so I think it's important if you're listening to this and you're a law firm owner that you do this and think about this in terms of every area, your finances, your business, even in relationships, because if we're having an interpersonal relationship with someone, sometimes things need to change. Maybe conversations need to be had. And I think that that's a natural evolution of any area of our life is to come back and readdress these things.
Yeah, yeah. Diversify. We're not all going to have a million followers on Instagram,
Right.
unfortunately.
And you don't need a million followers, right? Like you just need the right followers, the
That's
ones
right.
who love what you do. I'm
That's
hearing like
right.
as we're recording this, they're talking about TikTok being taken out of the US. And so there's people who have 18 million followers on
Yeah.
TikTok. And if they were diversifying, which I think probably a lot of them were, they would be trying to get them to follow them in different ways, sign on newsletter, and so on and so forth. But to think that those 18 million people doesn't mean that they're making $18 million dollars. Like they might have 18 million followers and there's like 100 people who maybe are hardcore, like they want to work with them. And that's all
Right.
you need.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. And Dina, I want to give you one other thing to think about here
Yeah.
with attorneys on the other side of the coin, right?
Hmm.
Um, we talked a lot about maybe those who are afraid to raise their rates. Kind of on the other end of the spectrum, what I see, one of the biggest lies that law firm owners tell themselves, and business owners like me, we tell ourselves this as well, is that more money will make it better.
Yes. Oh, yeah. That is such a good one because the grass is
Yeah,
always greener.
that's right.
That's
And
right.
so the goalpost is always moving.
Hmm.
It's the problem is we just think if I can just get to this revenue level, I'll
Yeah.
be set.
Oh,
The problem,
yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
but
You'll
then you
feel
get there,
safe. You'll have everything you need. Yeah. And when you get there,
it's not enough,
yeah.
right? And this is actually there are four categories of money scripts. This one we is a category called money worship, where
Hmm.
you feel that money is the key to freedom and happiness and fulfillment. So you're constantly seeking more and more and more and more and more. You
Hmm.
would think that that might be a good trait, right? But this is the weird irony. It's actually self-sabotaging
Hmm.
because these types of individuals tend to be workaholics. They tend to overspend,
That's all of us listening.
right? So we need to stop and we need to ask ourselves, what truly makes me happy?
Yeah. Yeah.
When in my life was I truly the happiest? You know, Dina, one of the times in my life when I was actually the happiest, when I just graduated college and I
Interesting.
was dirt poor
Mm.
and I made $36,000 a year and lived in a tiny little apartment, but I was happy.
Hmm.
So we need to think to ourselves, it's not more will not make us happy.
Yeah.
It's such a crucial thing to understand. And the biggest trick in life is to get the goalpost to stop moving.
Yeah. And I think that part of what you're saying there also, the evolution of that is like once you have what you thought was going to be quote enough, then you start to become afraid of losing it. You're not, you are not noticing that it's just part of I need more. It's that hungry money monster that's just like I need more, I need more, I need more.
Hmm.
And what, when I'm working with lawyers, we're always talking about safety and where does that come from? Because part of it is this primal thing where we think it's going to make us safe, it's going to give us freedom, it's going to give us all these happiness, joy, all those things. And you can use money as a tool for things, but things aren't going to make you happy or safe.
Hmm.
And one of the exercises I've been through with coaches is really, sitting with myself and recognizing what really creates safety, which is always going to be me. My prior investments in myself, that made me really confident that I know what I need to do in order to take care of myself, in order to take
Hmm.
care of my family. And it's not about money, that I am supported in so many ways, starting with myself
Yeah.
and looking externally for the money. It's also a great validator, right? Like the money is like, oh, that means I've made it. That means that other people will see me as successful. And that success means I'm a better person, right? There's so many traps when it comes to exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so that leads into the money status idea, the idea
Mhm.
that um, I need to attain a certain net worth in order to achieve, right? In order to have a certain status level, I need
Yeah.
to drive a certain car. I need to have a certain house. Here's the really fun part about that, right? And Morgan Housel talks about this in his book, and I've seen this so many times, right? There's a guy, he shows up to the restaurant, he's driving a Bugatti, all the women are all over him. Every night he's coming to the bar and he's driving the Bugatti and it's he's the center of attention. One night he shows up in a Honda. What happened? He couldn't make the payments. You know what I mean? So just because somebody has, right, is
Yeah.
driving lives in doesn't mean that they have peace.
Yeah.
They could be way in over their head. So, this is, there's so much of this keeping up with the Joneses in our society. We feel like we need to do X, Y, and Z because we compare ourselves to others. And a lot of this comes from our, generations before us growing up, the post World War II generation. Incomes were very equal. Everybody was
Mm.
coming back from war. Everybody was making a decent wage. The suburbs were sprouting up everybody everywhere. People were very, very much on a level playing field. It was one
Mm.
of the most um, income level times in our history. That the gap between the rich and the poor actually shrunk in the post World War II era, which
Wow.
is really fascinating. So a lot of this comparison where we feel like we need to be just like everybody else comes from that in our society, that time period. The problem is, since that time, the gap between the rich and the poor has only dramatically
Mhm.
widened.
Hmm.
So there's so much keeping up with the Joneses going on.
Okay, you got to tell me what are the other two categories that you have in this quadrant that you're talking about?
Yeah, so we have money vigilance, which is
Mhm.
guarding the money. Money should be saved, not used. And you might think, well, great, right? I mean, it means you're not going to overspend. But the problem is maybe you're not taking risks you need to take. Maybe you're
Mm.
being too guarded.
Tell
Maybe
me more
you're,
about that. Like, how would they
yeah.
know that that's what's happening?
Um, you're gonna retire and you're gonna die with way more. Like basically, when we run your retirement projections, your money is gonna way outlast you. Now
Hmm.
that might be fine if maybe you have charitable intentions or something like that. But if not, if you're just scared, I see this a lot with people who retire. They're scared to spend, and I
Mm.
actually have to have conversations with people where it's like, you need to start spending.
Oh, interesting.
If you're going to enjoy this money, you need to start spending. Go travel, go be, because we all have limited time here on Earth, and you're going to wind up with way more money. You're going to leave behind way more money than you wanted to. You can't take it with you.
Right.
So money vigilance sometimes comes into play. Um, and the other one's money avoidance. That's the first one we talked about, where you feel guilty,
Hmm.
guilty about money, guilty for desiring money. You equate money with greed and corruption and evil. So you have money
Mm.
avoidance, money worship, money status, and money vigilance.
It's just so funny. Like, and there are people who exhibit multiple of these because as you're talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's me and that's me
Yeah,
and
it's
that's
true.
me. You know,
You might have a combination. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting to kind of, listen to those different categories and see where there might be some areas for you, you're listening here, like to explore to see if, oh, is that me? Am I fearful of spending money? Am I holding on to it tightly? Am I not even aware of money? Right? I think that that can come into play too, where because we have these fears around not being enough, not having enough, the status, not having the status that I want, oftentimes we put our head in the sand and we don't even want to look. And
No.
so that will prevent somebody from signing up with an advisor. It'll prevent somebody from, signing up with a coach. It'll prevent somebody from ever looking at a budget, right? Because basically, and the excuse I hear is when I know that their head's in the sand is I don't have time.
Yeah.
It's that's the easy one, right? I just don't have time. But
Yeah.
we make time for what's important to us. So I'm curious how you see that show up and what you would
Yep.
say to that.
100%. So many of us don't have time just as busy adults. But if you're a lawyer and a business owner, that compounds itself.
Yeah.
Um, but you're right. We make time for the things that are important. Put it in your calendar. Have a money day. For me, my money days are the 10th and the 25th of each month,
Mm.
following Dan Martell's advice in Buy Back Your Time.
Mm.
Those are the days I. Oh no, that's sorry, that's from Profit First.
Is it? Okay. I get them confused. When you
Yeah,
read
right.
enough money books, I'm sure like you have, you're
They're all
like,
over the
where did
place.
that come from?
So that's for business. For my business finances, I look at them twice a month because I was looking at business finances weekly, and that was
Mm.
good. I think that's good. But 10th and the 25th seems to be a good pattern. For my personal finances, I look at my personal finances weekly, and I like Saturday mornings. On Saturday morning, I use Monarch Money for my budgeting.
Mm.
And, we don't want to look because we're too busy, but then we know it's a big hot mess. And so it keeps us stuck there. Like, I don't want to look at it. I don't want to
Yeah.
start doing this because I just don't. Well, here's what you can do. You can start from this point forward, right?
Yeah.
Leave the past. Let's start from this point forward
Yes.
and do, we can't do anything about the big hot mess in the past. Let's do something about this coming week. And let's
Yeah.
just start, getting things in order based on, week by week. And when you start doing that, you start building that habit, it becomes easier and easier. Um, so that works for me. You got to find out what works for you. But I like Saturday mornings before everybody gets up. I can get on Monarch. I can go through the transactions. I can go through the budgets. I can see what's going on with the money. I can make any
Mhm.
changes that need to be made.
It's funny. You're the second person who's mentioned Monarch Money to me. I had a client who discovered it because she was looking for a tool to really help her and her husband put their finances in one place so they could
Yes.
see, oh, yeah, you have money, I have money. We have plenty of money to pay all of the bills. But usually we just know what one person has. And so then
Mhm.
we don't even think to account for what the other person has. So that just seems like a really cool tool. So I'll link to it in the show notes so everybody can find
Yeah.
it.
What I love about Monarch is that each spouse can have their own login.
Mm.
So that's a really cool thing. Like, and then you can even have your financial advisor. You can share data with your financial advisor, your coach, your tax person. They can have a login and they can log in and they can see and they can help you with that as well. So we actually use that with our clients.
Mm.
We help, we pay for it for our clients, and then we help
Okay.
them get set up on it and help them get it organized.
Nice. That's awesome. So this conversation's kind of been far ranging, but really focused on mindset. I'm curious what else you would want to offer to somebody listening to this who is interested in understanding themselves better and their relationship with money better.
Hmm. I think it just starts, I think some quality journaling, some meditative time,
Yeah.
right? You know, we're all so busy. Our minds are racing. We wake up at 3 in the morning and we're thinking about the business, right? Take some time, set aside some time to just be still and reflect. We all
Hmm.
need that time in our lives. So I would make that a priority first.
Yeah.
Reflect and think about what really makes you happy. Think about your background, your upbringing. What are some of the things that you may have learned about money that may be influencing how you behave or the decisions that you make?
Okay, so I just got this tool that made so much sense. And so, anyone listening to this, do what Darren's saying here and try this exercise on for size too, because I think this is a really fun one. Ask yourself the question, or just fill in the blank of this sentence money is, right?
Mm,
So, money is safety, money is love, money is freedom, like whatever your words are, just ask yourself that. And then ask yourself, like, think about a tool that you would use, you would just get out of your shed, like a shovel. And then I want you to fill in the blank of this sentence. A shovel is, and then use the same words that you used for money. A shovel is freedom. A shovel is love. A shovel is happiness, whatever that is, right? And notice the dissonance in your body with whatever words you used from money and the words you used with shovel. And it'll just kind of show you where you're not thinking about money as an exchange tool, and instead you're putting meaning onto money that it does not have.
mm.
Right. I just thought I had got just recently got that exercise and I was like, yeah, that can bring so much awareness.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And you could expand it to other things like debt. Debt is, or
Hmm.
all different areas of finance. Explore, really explore all those things.
Yeah, because debt's one of those things that so many of us have these emotions around as if it's
Mhm.
bad or wrong. And even a lot of advisors will say it's bad or wrong. And then it becomes this judgment of ourselves for having it. And then of course we don't want to talk about it or look at the numbers or even think
Yeah.
about it. And then it becomes another situation where our head's in the sand. So if you can look at debt with more neutrality, like it's a tool, and
Hmm.
just kind of notice the dissonance in your body when you recognize what you're associating with debt versus, let's say, a shovel. So it's a really fascinating exercise.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else you want to share as we wrap up?
Just, hey, if you want to be a part of our book club, reach out to us. You can find us at lawyermillionaire.com. And the book club and the network is at community.lawyermillionaire.com. It's free to join for law firm owners. So hope to see you there.
Yeah, and great. And I'm going to definitely link to all of that in the show notes. Do you have any words of wisdom that you want to share with our
Mm.
listeners as we close out?
It's, you never make too little to save,
Mm.
and there's no such thing as too small of savings,
I
right?
think that that's really important. I think we should actually, before we go, spend a little time there because when we think about saving, a lot of times we think, oh, I'm behind. I should
Mhm.
have been saving more. And that's where all that judgment comes in. But what if you could save $10 a month just to start a
Yeah.
habit?
Well, there's even that app, I forget the name of it, that will round up each of your purchases,
Oh, I
and
don't know
it'll.
what that is. I'll have to look
Oh
for that.
yeah, some banks will do this too. Ally Bank, I love Ally Bank. By the way, you can round up each of your transactions. So let's say you buy something for $10.50, it'll round it up to $11. It'll save the 50 cents. Put the 50 cents in your savings. And you'd be
Ooh.
surprised. Actually, I've known people who've done this, and it adds up to thousands of dollars over the course of a year. It's incredible. So,
Hmm.
and following the profit first system, right? You may
Wow.
think, oh, I can't save. Things are too tight. You can save 1% of your income. I
Hmm.
guarantee you. I guarantee you can save 1%. You won't
Yeah.
miss it.
Yeah, profit first is very flexible. I'll link to the book in the show notes too, but it's very flexible. Yeah, it gives you the guidelines, but you can start anywhere. You can tweak the percentages to start anywhere for that works for you.
Hmm.
And so it's not as if it's a hard and fast rule, but it's a beautiful way to get yourself thinking consciously about money and where your money's being directed. Because if you're not conscious about it, then you have no power, right? If you're
Right.
totally unconscious, you're giving away all of your power to money, to wherever the money flows. You have no clue. And you always want to at least have some intentionality around the numbers, even if it's just looking at them once a week, every 2 weeks, whatever it is, but get yourself conscious of the numbers and allow yourself to be with any discomfort that you're feeling because it's just a feeling. You know, the numbers aren't going to hurt you, I promise. I'm sure you could say that you're like, right? Do you ever say that to your people? You're just like, I
Yeah,
promise you it'll be okay.
that's absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this episode, Darren. This was really
Yeah,
great. I love talking mindset, and then to have a money mindset pro on here is fabulous. So I appreciate that.
awesome. Thanks for having me, Dina.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Be a Better Lawyer. I loved talking to Darren in this episode. Please take advantage of the resources that we've talked about in this episode. Go to dinacataldo.com/351 to get all of the links for everything that we talked about. And remember, you have what it takes to make the changes you want to see in your life. If you are inspired to take action to change how you work in your practice and how you live outside of it, book a strategy session with me to learn more about working with me one on one. You can book your call at dinacataldo.com/strategy session. All right, my friend, I will talk to you next week. Bye.